child care providers, especially Kelsey Sullivan, for teaching our children the fundamentals while we're working. Child care providers. Please join me with the pledge. Put your hand on your heart. Go ahead.
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance
to
to
the
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Kelsey Sullivan, you have done a good job. Good job there, Abigail. Right on. All right. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Finally here.
Councilmember Daris,
Here.
Councilmember Funk,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Here.
Mayor Moreno,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Well, if you're attending in person, welcome. If you are on Zoom, on YouTube, on KPRL 1230, Channel 20, any of those things, we welcome you and we're so glad that you are participating this evening. If you would like to speak by phone for public comment, you can dial into the following phone number, 669-900-6833. Once again, that is 669-900-6833. And the meeting ID is 889-2347-9018. Once again, meeting ID 889-2347-9018. And if you go to atascadero.org and you download the agenda, that will be right on the front page. If you do call in, let us know what item you would like to speak on. And of course, if you're in Zoom in the webinar, you can always raise your hand when it comes time for community forum or public comment. I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Borbo, a second by Councilmember Funk, and we will waive the reading in full of all ordinances appearing on this agenda. And the titles of the ordinances will be read aloud by the city clerk at the first reading after the motion and before the city council votes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno,
Yes, ma'am.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to our consent calendar. The items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be voted just in one motion unless there's a member of the council or a member of the public wishing to pull an item or make comments. So I will look to council to see if there are any polling or Councilmember Funk.
Brief comment on number 4.
Wonderful. Any others? Seeing none, go right ahead.
First of all, congratulations to all of the others who were elected. And just to note that what we're doing as a routine part of our consent agenda is acknowledging the election. And this is so basic and routine part of our democracy, that everybody that you as voters elect has the same responsibility to acknowledge an election and proceed to implement the results.
And I have yes, please.
I'm
Councilmember.
sorry for the late comment, Mayor. I was going to just make a comment about A5, not to pull it.
Go right ahead.
Just, this is awarding a contract for the replacement of the Santa Lucia Road Bridge over Graves Creek. And if you read the staff report, it just shows how long it takes to do something through the state and permitting agencies and getting the money from the federal government. But I just want to thank our staff for making it happen and sticking with it and doing it in the professional job you've done. And it'll pay off for our citizens in the long, but thank you for seeing it through.
Absolutely. Ditto that. And I did have a quick question on 5, because you do in the staff report mention the Via Bridge. And so some might be wondering, well, when's that one happening? I know we don't quite have funding yet, but do we have a sense of the timeline on the Via Avenue Bridge?
We actually did surprisingly get funding for Via Avenue Bridge late this fall, so just about a month or so ago. It is getting ready to go out to bid, so it is just behind the Santa Lucia Bridge. We were very pleasantly surprised to hear that it had met the criteria and had been funded by the feds. So
Wonderful. Thank you for updating everyone. Any member of the public wishing to pull an item, I will look to the webinar. Anyone here? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Funk, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
And I will now turn this over to our city clerk to administer the oaths of office.
Please repeat after me. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office for which I'm about to enter. Congratulations.
And while they're coming back, I just want to say congratulations, and it's great to have the old team back together again.
And I did want to go ahead and give my colleagues the opportunity. If there's anyone who wanted to say anything, I thank you very much, Councilmember Borbo. Any comments?
Well, congratulations to getting the team all back together.
Yeah,
All three of you.
thank you.
Look forward to serving another 4 years.
Yes,
It's an honor and a privilege to serve the community and to serve with all of you.
absolutely. I think we've been a good team, and thank you to all of you who have trusted us with this very important and grave responsibility. We take it seriously, and we very much appreciate you, and it truly is a privilege to serve.
I also appreciate the trust of the people of the Atascadero placing their faith and trust in me. And it's a pleasure to work with excellent elected officials and the staff. We shall all be appreciative of all of them. They do a great job.
Absolutely, Jerry. Thank you. All right. So now we are on to our council reorganization. That's sort of a strong term. Whole things. But this is where we look to do our council appointment of the mayor pro tem. And the way mayor pro tem works is we just always rotated it, and it's a 2-year appointment, and it just tends to rotate to kind of naturally whoever's kind of turn it seems to be, and it seems to bubble up and make sense. So with that, I will look for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mayor Pro Tem, I'm honored to nominate my fellow colleague, Susan Funk, to serve in my role.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Heather Newsom and a second by Councilmember Borbeau. And I will ask Councilmember Funk if she is willing to serve in that capacity.
I am willing and honored to serve.
All right. And any other comments from our council? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am. Great.
I
I
asked her if she wanted to swap seats.
I always appreciate someone willing to serve in that role. There's times when, for whatever reason with my schedule, I'm unable to, fulfill certain responsibilities. And Mayor Pro Tem Newsom has certainly been very helpful in that. Councilmember Borbo the same, and Councilmember Funk. What I know of you, I have no doubt that you will serve well. So thank you very much for the willingness to do that. All right, we'll now move on to updates from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk about a series of events. It's the holiday season. I think the last time I was here, I listed on and on and on about all the events that were coming up. Tonight's a little bit shorter as we move closer to the holiday season. So we've been enjoying a series of events over the past several weeks since we met last, from Light Up the Downtown to the 22nd annual holiday musical walk around the lake, to Winter Wonderland and Santa's pop-up reindeer farm at the zoo. And we still have more to come. So if that wasn't enough, we have a few more. Holiday Magic at the Charles Paddock Zoo on Saturday, December 17th from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. The zookeepers will become Santa's elves as they deliver presents to the animal. There is nothing more fun than to watch the animals open their presents. It is a lot of fun, and it's very interesting to watch the animals. Some ignore them, some jump all over them. It's great. Santa and Mrs. Claus will also be on hand for the kids, and Gary Brill will be playing holiday tunes. Finally, you can visit our gift shop to find that special stocking stuffer or buy a zoo membership for the family. You can pop in anytime to our gift shop. You don't have to pay for admission to the zoo. It is a great place to go Christmas shopping, trust me. So it's all great. And then we will go on to the next slide and talk about holiday annual Trail of Lights. I'm sorry, too many things going on here. So thank you to all of our residents who decorated their homes in time for the 3rd annual Trail of Lights contest. This is a contest that we started during COVID as we had to shut down our events, and thought about what fun things we could do not gathering together, and put together a wonderful map of residents that decorate their homes and their businesses for all of us to drive by and see. Winners were announced at Winter Wonderland, but I want to announce them again. So best use of theme, which is this one here. It's a Merry Patchwork Christmas, and it's located at 3950 San Anselmo Drive. So please drive by and take a look at it. The second place was traffic lights. There's a lot of red and green lights at 5690 Traffic Way. They also had came in second for best use of theme. Most creative light display was on Christmas Circle, 9071 Palomar Avenue. And the second place for most creative light display was the Clark Home at 3015 Avenida del Sol. And the very last best overall light display was a Merry Patchwork Christmas on San Anselmo. If you go to our website, We have a holiday lighting tour map, showcases all of the homes who have decorated decorated now through December 25th. All of these homes have committed to have the lights on every evening from 5 to 8 p.m. It gives you the address, the theme, a picture of them, all on the website. It's a lot of fun to drive around and see how creative people are and the heart that you can put into it. And if you miss signing up and you think, I did a great job, I need to be on the map too, you can still register up until December 22nd. Just go to visit atascadero.com, Trail of Lights to sign up. And then the last one, want to talk a little bit about City Hall here. We have some holidays coming up and some events. So the last day of school will be December 23rd. The city offices will be closed on December 23rd and 26th and January 2nd. So have that. And then Colony Park Community Center will also be closed the 23rd through the 26th and January 2nd. City Hall will also be closed tomorrow from 11:45 to 1:30. We do a holiday luncheon to appreciate all of the hard work that all of our employees do every year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
I do want to say right here on this slide, it says city council office or city office is closed December 24th through 26th. That should say 23rd,
It
correct?
should say 23rd.
Okay, so
We're
just
closed
for-
the Friday before.
Yeah,
and
so for anyone who's watching or listening, or you're seeing this slide, know that it is Friday, the 23rd. The city will be closed through Monday, the 26th. So
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Any questions for the city manager? All right, we will move on to community forum. This is the portion of our meeting that's reserved for persons wishing to address the council on an item that is not on our agenda this evening, but over which we have jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and we set aside a total of 30 minutes for community forum. And we'll have a timer going for your, just so you can help pace yourself. If you come forward, just say your name for the record. We would appreciate that. And we look forward to hearing from you. So if you're here in person and you want to speak, go ahead and come on up right now. And if you are on the Zoom webinar, you can raise your virtual hand. So looking right now for anyone wishing to speak at community forum. I am not seeing anyone, so please don't wait to raise your hand. All right, I will go ahead and close community forum and bring this back to council because let's see. Since we have no one wishing to speak at this time, community forum will remain open until 6:49 p.m. And so at this time, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. But if you come in and decide, oh, there's something I wanted to say and it's before 6:49, raise your hand and we will get to you at the earliest possible opportunity. All right, so now we're on to our first management report, and this is their general plan update project, and this is phase 2. Looking forward to this evening, and I will turn that over to our community development director, Mr. Phil Densmore.
Thank you and good evening, council. This is a moment we've been waiting for quite a while, our general plan update. We've been talking about it for years. Well, now it's really happening. I don't need to tell you it's going to be happening in a few weeks, a few months. This is actually it. And over the next few months will be the heart of all the activities, all of the outreach that we'll be doing in a series of meetings. And we're going to start tonight by going through some great community questions that we've already kind of put out there a little bit that help us gather some background information. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Dan Amson, he's with MIG, he's our primary consultant for the General Plan Update Project, go through a series of just slides to tell you what we've been doing and what's coming next. We're going to go through that presentation. And then once we close that presentation and bring it back to the council, after we go out for some for some public input, we will also then be able to go back through those questions again. So I'll lead you through that. But let's introduce Dan Amson with MIG. I'm hearing a little bit of. Oh, there we go. That's better. Thank you. That extra voice was talking in my ear back to me. So good evening, Dan. Take it away. And do you have the presentation or should I bring?
I do. I will pull it up.
Perfect. And we can share a screen and we can do that. Okay.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Phil, and good evening, Mayor and council members. Good to see everyone again. It's been a few months since last time I was here at a council meeting, but we're excited, as Phil said, to really get the general plan update fully underway. And I have a presentation that I'll share here that really is kind of an overview. I cannot share right now. Okay, here. There we go. Okay, now we are up and running. So as Phil mentioned, I have a little bit of an overview of where we are in the general plan update process. We really started last January with meeting with City Council to review the scope and review sort of this project, this process, go through the schedule, and also really importantly, get council's feedback and planning commission feedback on a lot of different elements of this project. It's a 2-year effort. And for the benefit of the community, I think most council members already know this, but for the benefit of council members as well, the general plan is really the city's overarching public policy document. It addresses items of land use, environmental protection, mobility, health, parks, community services. And doing a comprehensive update like this is something most communities undertake every 15 to 20 years. It's a big process, and there's a lot of things that will take place over the next 2 years, but also really an important time to think kind of big and think about the vision and the future of Atascadero and really the future the community would like for the city. And so it's a little bit of a lag, not a problem. So as a quick refresher, back in January, again, we met with council and commission, talked through the scope. We had some discussion around challenges and opportunities facing the community. We're going to build on some of that discussion here tonight. But one of the key first steps of this process, working closely with city staff, was putting together what we call a community involvement strategy. And this builds from the scope of work, but provides a lot of detail and almost a playbook on different activities, events, notifications, branding. This is a big project for the city, and we really want to make sure we're reaching the breadth of the community in a lot of different ways. Obviously, coming out of the pandemic, high tech with Zoom and online surveys, but a lot of in-person events, or as we call high touch events as well. So this was a key starting point, and we use this strategy a few different ways as we start having stakeholder meetings, workshops, discussions. This is also an iterative discussion or an iterative document, and maybe it changes or morphs over time, different ways to engage the community, but really a key tool that we'll be using with staff over the next 2 years to make sure we're reaching the full community. This is our overall schedule graphic. It is a little bit of an eye chart, but what it shows really is the depth of analysis, research, materials, but also community engagement throughout this process. So this top row here are all the various engagements, activities, event sets, workshops, surveys, meetings. This bottom row are the different reports, analysis, technical studies, alternatives. And the way this project is going to be run is at each key milestone, we'll be meeting with the community, as well as, planning commission, city council, developers, business owners, this broad assortment of folks to get feedback, get ideas, and use that to refine all the milestones as we go through this project. This schedule is also on the project website as well. But we're really in the start of phase 2 of the project, and we're calling it discovery and visioning. Really, it's 2 big components. One, the consultant team, and we have economists, traffic engineers, public works folks, are doing a detailed inventory of the existing conditions in Atascadero, streets, areas that have traffic, land use, and really a baseline analysis that we can use for this project. But out of that analysis, which is currently underway, some key opportunities or items for discussion with the community as well, or sort of aha moments that come out of that analysis. tied to that is talking with the community about a future vision, assets, opportunities, and challenges, and also some key things we should be thinking about, maybe need to do a little bit more research on or more understanding of as we really start this process. So a few things that have already taken place. One great initial thing, really working with your fantastic staff on branding and identity for this project. And we went through several different iterations, but really landed on authentic Atascadero. And this comes from a lot of community discussions, as well as what we've heard from council and planning commission, but really thinking about this project as an opportunity to build upon the great local character, the strengths of the community, but have a land use and planning strategy going forward that really builds on the authenticity of not only the physical city, but the people here as well, our city, our plan. So this brand has been added to newsletters, some initial open houses and pop-up events. We also put together some fortune cookies as well as part of this process. So really trying to find fun, creative ways early on to get the word out about the project and the importance of it. Similarly, we put together an initial sort of fact sheet or newsletter. It provides overview of the project. What is the general plan? Why is the city undertaking an update right now? As well as the schedule and ways that people can be involved as sort of a physical material, but something we can also email out as well. Another really big piece early on in this project was putting together a standalone website dedicated to this project. It's Atascadero2045.org. There's also a QR code you can scan or go to the website as well. And the point of a standalone website is we really have the opportunity to upload information, upload documents, materials, all about this project. So really it's one-stop place for the community to learn about the project, but also understand key topics, get materials, documents, drafts of things as they're published. But what's pretty cool about the website as well is members of the community can add their email address, and we'll be sending out regular email notifications. So if there's news items or materials or documents are posted, you can be up to date and informed. And it also has a calendar feature. So as we really launch into the community engagement process here in January, open house updates on locations and times, pop-up events, all that information will be on the website, really a one-stop shop for the project. So we've already launched a few pop-up events, which has been really great. And city staff has been fantastic in helping and getting the word out. And a few of them are in these photos as well. And I think some pets from a few city staffs are also in these photos. We had a pop-up booth at the cruising weekend where we engaged folks in the community, asked questions around assets, opportunities, and challenges, and handed out those coasters and fortune cookies and other materials, again, partially to get ideas from the community, but also really to get the word out about this project and to bring awareness to it. Similarly, at Colony Days Parade, we had this great banner, again, with the project brand, logo, and really trying to get some awareness of the project. Another big effort, and this is something that's typical early on a general plan update project, is we also have been having sort of one-on-one or small group discussions with a lot of stakeholders, community groups, elected and appointed officials, really as a way to have sort of initial discussion, brainstorm some ideas. We've been getting a wealth of feedback and input as well, and I'll mention some of that in just a moment. But really, this has been kind of the start of the engagement process, again, as we're launching into this project. So I mentioned earlier the consultant team has been really busy putting together basically what we call technical studies, but it's also kind of a background report or a summary of existing conditions information. And we're putting together a whole series of topical studies, land use and community form, physical conditions, biological resources, cultural resources. You can see the list here. And this is really a key starting point to understand just data information mapping the existing scenario within Atascadero. But as part of this analysis, we're also pulling out some key findings. So this is a technical compendium of documents that will be several hundred pages long. It's also part of the environmental review process eventually. But we're going to create a smaller document that's essentially an executive summary. We're calling it an atlas, but it'll really summarize these key takeaways, opportunities, challenges that come from this existing conditions analysis. So more user-friendly, but if anyone wants to understand a lot of the detailed background, the technical studies will have that as well. So a few things we want to talk about tonight. I'm just going to go through these questions and provide some of the feedback we've already heard from stakeholders, and then have a discussion with council and community afterwards. But as we start the general plan project, it's really good to sort of think of where we are today, but also where do we want to go as a city and a community into the future. The general plan, as the website indicated, looks out to about 2045. So this is a long-term plan. It's not 1 or 2 years. It's really thinking forward thinking and ahead into the future, so we can start planning for changes. And that may be growth, or maybe other things, improvements to mobility and circulation. But one of the first sets of questions is really around assets and visionings. What are the strengths, assets, unique qualities that make Atascadero great? What tied to that, what should be protected and enhanced? What are the things that are wonderful? And what we've heard from the pop-up discussions, also from the stakeholder discussions we've had so far, and just a starting point, there was a lot of feedback, and very positive feedback, around sort of the small town character, small scale feel, and the community aspect of Atascadero, but also the natural beauty and access to that natural beauty as well. Family oriented community. We had a lot of feedback about how wonderful the events are and the amount of events. And so I know staff over the last several years has really been working hard at that. So kudos to staff. But also we heard feedback of the close-knit business community and property owners, and really leveraging that as an asset as new projects or growth or change come in. We also asked about the vision, and a vision is always the most aspirational thing to think about. But some of the things we heard about the vision in sort of the positive opportunities around that, again, protecting the unique character of Atascadero, not Paso Robles, not San Luis Obispo, nothing against those two communities, but what is unique about Atascadero, and really building on that, which again got to the logo and brand of this project, Authentic Atascadero, but also a range of housing in the future, and a range of jobs, and a lot of comments around allowing youth and kids who grow up here to be able to settle down here, and seniors to be able to retire and have healthcare and other amenities. So really that full lifetime span, being able to stay in Atascadero, but then the housing and jobs that tie to that was a key thing we heard. Also, an opportunity to grow or evolve or change more sustainably, or more resilient. So being able to adapt to the threat of wildfires or flooding, as well as just more sustainable, greener new development that may come in. But also another vision sort of element or theme we heard a lot about was economic growth that really supports the local community. So growth being not necessarily a bad thing, a good thing, but having it, again, get back to that authentic Atascadero, the community, and being the right scale and character. So the second set of questions, or just sort of topic, is really more around challenges and opportunities. And I like to always say is there'll always be challenges, but every challenge is also an opportunity to find a solution as well. So they usually are pretty integrated in the way they can be addressed in the general plan. But the questions we asked were, what are the most critical challenges or opportunities related to new residential development, or commercial or employment development, or public facilities and services, amenities the city can provide, or activities at parks, or other services like police and fire. And here, again, we heard, high cost of living and housing is a challenge, especially for younger folks or young families trying to settle down, but also maintaining that history and character and urban form and scale as new development comes in and not losing the character of the community. We also heard a lot, and part of the stakeholders we engaged with were developer business community, but also heard about creating development incentives or streamlining processes, but tied to the type of development the city would like to see or the community's vision of it, and really leveraging some of those opportunities as part of the new general plan potentially. Some other challenges, the sewer system and infrastructure, is a challenge, especially in certain parts of the community, or the location of certain services or lack of services in certain areas. So a lot of brainstorming already took place around some of these challenges and opportunities. But we also asked the question, and this is kind of similar or a different way of phrasing it, over the past 10 years, which development projects do you consider to be the most successful or least successful? Not trying to pick out pros and cons of literal projects, but trying to understand why or what the community reactions were of things people liked or didn't like. And was it height? Was it form? Was it types of uses, colors, those kinds of things? And tied again, the last sort of question around this, opportunities or challenges, mobility and transportation, which is always a core area of a general plan. And we heard a lot about more walkable character and more walkable scale, pedestrian scale, especially in downtown. Lack of sidewalks in more rural areas or ADA access also came up. And also, I think a big theme, which is probably not surprising, but trying to get more bike trail connections and the ability to bike around the community more easily came up as well through the discussions. So our last category of questions, and we like to ask this very intentionally before we jump into a community engagement process, who else should we be reaching out to during this process? Other stakeholders, community organizations. We're going to have large citywide open houses and surveys, but is there more targeted outreach that we can do as part of this project? And what's the best way to reach them? Zooms, in-person meetings. We have a lot of flexibility, but again, going back to a community involvement strategy, we want to make sure we're really reaching as many voices as we can through this project. And then lastly, a question of any other things our team should be aware of as we move forward, or other topics. So I know we're going to come back to the questions, but first I wanted to give a little more information on our next steps. So after this evening and really into January, we're going to be working with staff to refine and publish this existing conditions and policy implications atlas. Essentially, it's an executive summary of all that technical work and feedback we heard. And this will be a highly visual map infographic kind of a document, but really kind of framing some of the unique things or more technical things that maybe all the community is not fully aware of. One key topic is the fiscal implications of certain types of land use around city revenue and those kinds of things, or areas where there's mobility conflicts around safety or traffic, and really trying to articulate that. That's going to launch us into our first round of community engagement. We're calling it engagement series number 1, but it really is framing the vision for the future. And we like to use the technical work paired to the community's input as well to really refine the vision and some key guiding principles for this project. But as part of that engagement series in January, we're going to have meetings with senior staff at the city. We're calling that the STAC in mid-January. Targeted stakeholder community group outreach, and there's some flexibility in this, but we want to do another round of really going out to the community. We're going to have a community open house tentatively for January 25th. We're confirming the location, but we'll announce that on the website. But this will be multiple hours, likely on a Wednesday, to give the community an opportunity to come in, learn about where we are on the project, learn about the importance of the project, but also provide feedback as well.
I just want to underline that January 25th. That's a big one. That's really going to be a kind of workshop where people can drop in. They don't have to stay the whole time. We'll have a number of staff there. We will have a location announced shortly. We're pretty set on the date, but that is kind of the big premier public workshop. Come on out. We'll be educating folks about the process. We'll be taking feedback on the process. And it's really one of our big opportunities to really get out there early on.
I have a question on that.
I did as well. Great minds.
Would you like to go first?
The questions we're asking tonight that the public here present and on Zoom or anyone else calling in will be able to answer, like you've gone through those questions, Dan, and we'll go through this tonight. Is that the same process that's happening at this open house? Like if somebody's not here tonight, is the open house their next opportunity? Like, and where's sort of the cutoff of this initial type of feedback where we're really, is it that 25th date that in the next, 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks is when these kinds of questions are going to continue to be asked of the public and they can have input during that time frame? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so during the month of January, to Phil's point, the community open house is a very big event. And once we get the locations solidified in the hours, we're going to do a lot of notifications to really get the word out. We're also going to do a survey in January that will match the questions of the open house in case people can't attend the open house. The questions will be a little bit different than tonight. We will talk about visioning and assets, opportunities, and challenges. But at the open house, the difference is there's going to be more information about the existing conditions and some of the constraints, for lack of a better term, or other factors that go into that as well. So it'll be a little bit more in-depth discussion on what really trying to refine some of those opportunities or how we can address some of those challenges a little bit more detailed. But to get to your second important point, Mayor, all of this information and feedback will largely be done in January. So the idea is the end of January, we will compile a consolidated summary of everything we've heard from stakeholder meetings and pop-ups through the workshops and the survey. The city council is tentatively scheduled for a strategic planning retreat in early February. So we want to have that summary available for that retreat because there is likely some overlap on near-term priorities. And then after the retreat, we're going to work with staff to put together a draft vision and what we call guiding principles. And guiding principles are kind of the highest level goals for the general plan update, but it's really going to build off of all of that community feedback. That will then go back to council in February for your review and refinement as well. So in February, when we meet, what was the 28th, which we're targeting right now with the draft vision guiding principles, that's really the end product of this phase, which would then let us launch into the next phase of thinking about alternatives to take back to the community. So each one of these phases have engagement activities with the community, but this particular phase right now is scheduled to conclude with the council study session on February 28th.
Okay. And just know that when Dan calls the city council gathering in early February a retreat, what he means is a business meeting that we will hold here on the 4th floor. We're not going to the Ojai Spa or
I should qualify retreat.
Just to be clear, Councilmember Darris.
Yeah, the question I have on the community open house, we've had these in the past, and comments have come to me from people in the community that when they're during the week like this, it's hard for people that work to get to these. And why don't we hold these on the weekends where it's, more accessible to people that would likely have that day off? I just wonder if you can address that.
I think what we found over time, it's kind of hit and miss. Some people don't want to engage on the weekend because they want to be going out with family and doing other things. Some people don't want to engage during the week because they can't because they're working. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other. You've got to find that perfect combination. And really the best combination is to hit up, if you have the opportunity, multiple times, you keep that window open. We're having this one open house, but we're also going to keep other windows open. And it's probably going to be virtually in those other opportunities. But yeah, it's a challenge to find that right time. When do you get that right cross section where you can get the working folks, you can get the families, you can get the retired, you can get the younger folks. How do you get them all? And it's difficult. So you bring up a really good point, though.
I agree. Thank you. And are these times that I know it's not set now, you're still looking on, will there be evening hours or is it mostly going to be during normal business hours?
Oh, this should extend into the evening. And so it should be an afternoon into an evening situation.
Okay. All right.
Where there is that opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Funk. Mayor Pro Tem Funk. Just like with Heather, it took me a while to get there, but well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on Councilmember Daris's point that yes, really like us to make sure that this goes into the evening, particularly and even at least to 7 o'clock. So that people who are coming from a lot of our folks work in San Luis Obispo and some work up in Paso Robles. So that as people are coming back into the community in the evening at the end of their workday, they have time to participate and people can work this around kids and dinner and all that, good things of life. Thank you.
And thank you for allowing that interruption. So please continue. I think you were towards the end, but
This is actually the last slide. And I did want to mention Bridget Brown and Noe Noyola, my office, are also on the Zoom right now with a mural taking a lot of notes as well. So this is the type of feedback we're looking for tonight as we refine this process moving in January.
wonderful. Thank you. Very thorough report. And I think it really explains the process well and where we are in it. So tonight, what I want to do is we'll start with any questions that council might have, and we just kind of went through one, so that was good. And then Dan, what I'm going to ask you to do, or whoever is in charge of the slides, is to bring up, because what I want to do is open to public comment. So for any of you here, if you're on the webinar, and actually I'm going to give out that call-in information too. We're going to go through this in a series of public input, because I don't want you to feel like you've got to squeeze your answer to all of these questions into 3 minutes. And so we want to allow you, if whatever ones you want to speak on, we're going to have multiple opportunities. So we'll start with some questions, then we'll go to the public and get your input. And then from our perspective, what I would like council to do is, we've already, as you noticed, we are part of that stakeholder group. So we've had some one-on-one conversations with Dan and his team. And I know some of our council members still are going to be scheduling those meetings. Is that correct, Dan? We will be doing that. That's critical. So I want us to be able to maybe just summarize a little bit of our input, but we don't need to go and dive into all of the details of the conversations that we have had, especially when we're echoing. You probably saw a lot of us nodding along with the things you were saying. So there tends to be, a lot of agreement with the kind of things that our community wants to see. So if we could keep that sort of tight at that point. So let's start with any council questions. All right, we got no questions, so we're going to go to the community. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to give you, if you happen to be on YouTube, you're on channel 20 listening or watching, or you're on KPRL listening on the radio, I'm going to give you that phone number. It's 669-900-6833. Once again, 669-900-6833. And then when you dial in, you'll dial the meeting ID 889-2347-9018. Again, 889-2347-9018. And you can also go to visit Atascadero. I'm not visit Atascadero. Sorry. I'm thinking of all the fun stuff we do. Atascadero.org, and pull down the agenda and you will see it right there on the front page. So with that, I'm going to open up public comment specifically on assets and visions. So these questions you see up here about the strengths, the assets, what are the unique qualities that you think make Atascadero great? What do we need to protect or enhance? And overall, what is your vision for Atascadero? Throw in your 2 big ideas, anything within there that you would like to share. So we're going to open up public comment. If you are here in person, please come to the podium. If you are on the webinar, raise your hand. And if you're here, you have to have something to say, because you have to love Atascadero if you're a city council meeting. No pressure. Nobody has to speak, but I'm looking for hands raised. I'm not seeing any. I'm seeing anyone here wanting to say anything at all. All right. I'm going to give it a final 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, let's move to the next then. Challenges and opportunities. Sometimes this is one people might have more to say about. What do you see as the most critical challenges or opportunities that relate to development, whether it's residential or commercial, employment development in Atascadero? For those of you particularly who are business owners, that could be quite relevant. And what do you see as the most critical challenges or opportunities that relate to the services that we provide or the facilities that we provide as a city? So we'd love to hear anything that anyone has to say. Any input? Any hands raising? Don't wait to raise your hand. Like, just raise your hand if you're on the Zoom call. Okay, I'm not seeing any on that, so let's move to the next one, Dan. So new development and mobility. So looking at over the last 10 years, what do you see? And again, maybe not project specific, but what do you see as being, successful development, and maybe some that's not quite so? And what do you see as the difference between the two? And then also, what do you see are the biggest maybe mobility and transportation challenges that we face here in Atascadero? So any input, comments on those? And if you're not feeling like speaking tonight, you can certainly, come in and, to the open house or any of the other things. Oh, we've got somebody. Yay. Welcome.
Hello. I would say,
And please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry.
And Chief will help you with the mic there.
I'm Angela Cisneros. And I would say, I think the biggest successes in this town is just bringing people together, like our events bring people together. Our whole downtown projects have brought people together, and just bringing people in a space together as much as possible. And I think that creates a big community spirit and a connection with each other. So more of that, please.
Downtown infrastructure enhancement. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Go ahead and raise your hand or come forward. All right, I'm not seeing anyone else. So let's go to the last one. And this is kind of a little bit of a wrap up. I want you to look at this as, those questions didn't really resonate with me, but I have something to say about the community, about what, how I'd like to see us moving forward in the next 20 years. Tell us what that is. And then also, as Dan said, who else should we be reaching out to? Like, what groups should, you saw the list of, the service clubs, the chambers, and all of the organizations that we're reaching out to, because we want to reach as many people as possible. How else can we do that? What are your ideas? And is there something you want us to, the project team, as they're moving forward, that we really need to be aware of? So any input within that, come on up. All right. Lifelong Atascadero resident.
Angela Cisneros. I don't know, maybe the teachers, like a teachers union, teachers group, just because they have such a pulse with families and kids and what they see from their perspective is needed.
Thank you. Any other input? Anyone? I'm not seeing anyone on the webinar. I'm about to close public comments. So if there's anyone on the webinar that wants to say anything, please go ahead and raise your hand. We do want to hear from you. Even when people here, they don't want to speak. But I realize the 5 of us are up here like, yeah, we're like clamoring to speak. And I know most people don't want to speak publicly, so we can appreciate that. But as Dan has said, there will be other opportunities for input. So I'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll bring it back to council. So as we are looking at, this might be good if we go through each of these, and again, keeping it, kind of focused and not going overly broad and into the depth of conversation that we are having with you individually. but maybe each of us, if we want to chime in on this first part, this assets and vision, and then we'll go to each of the next ones. So I'm just going to kind of go left to right, right to left and back. So could we start with you, Councilmember Daris? And again, you don't need to go 1,
I don't need
2,
to go.
3, 4, just sort of overall assets and vision, what your kind of big thoughts are here. That you want the public to know that you've been thinking about and having, and are
Well,
about to have conversations if you haven't
well,
already. with Dan.
as far as what Dan was saying, ditto. I think he hit a lot of the, but I like the local events that we have. I think the small town charm obviously is something that I think is really endearing. What I really like about the Atascadero. Our strengths, I think in some ways our strengths is our location where we're kind of centrally located among, unfortunately, other destinations. Even though we want to be a destination, it's nice, I think, where we're at. If we can capitalize on that in one way, I think that'd be something. But I don't really have any big ideas on this one, so I'm going to kind of pass it on and listen to who's next.
Thank you, Councilmember Borbo.
Thank you. I don't know that it relates directly to the general plan update, but for me, one of the strengths of our community is the volunteer spirit that we have here, and so many good things that happen in Atascadero because of all of the volunteering and all the nonprofit organizations and groups that just do a lot of great things for our community. And for me, as far as the overall vision, particularly relating to the general plan update, is, as we all know up here, Atascadero has an imbalance between housing and jobs. You have a city like San Luis Obispo that has, tens of thousands of jobs, even more than its total population, doesn't have enough housing. We are a bedroom community. Historically, we have housing, but not enough jobs here. So a lot of our people leave the community every day to go to work. And so part of my vision, and I think it's important for the general plan to try to address, is a better balanced community in terms of jobs and housing. That also would mean, more shopping opportunities for our residents, which would also, of course, lead to more revenue staying in the city, because we're a reasonably well-off community, but we're a very low revenue and poor city. And so I think it's important for us to always keep that in mind and try to address it. And when I met with the team, the two things that I stressed or wanted to share that I think need to be addressed as part of this process is, one is revisioning our downtown. I've been here for 35 plus years, and we were talking about revitalizing our downtown in the mid 80s. And that was before we lost in downtown the post office and the water company and the garbage company office and with several other, which you normally consider, pillars of your core, and several retailers that we used to have and don't have anymore. And so, my two ideas are, we need to address downtown, where I'm open to the idea of higher buildings with more apartments, bringing more residents downtown that will support business downtown. And the other big idea I discussed with the team was that we have a lot of small commercial lots along El Camino Real, and many of them are not viable as commercial retail properties. And in the age of Amazon and other e-commerce distributors, pretty much every city in America has surplus retail commercial property. And we need to address that through this process. We can't just turn it all into housing, because, as everybody up here knows, housing simply does not generate enough revenue to pay for the services that our residents want. And so again, we need that balance. But I think there might be ways for us to encourage more commercial development while allowing some of that, perhaps through development credits, to that if you develop some commercial somewhere, you can convert some other commercial to housing or something. But that's something we need to address. So those are two big ideas in my mind that we need to address through this process. One being downtown, what we would do with downtown, and the other being what we do with the commercial properties, small ones along El Camino.
Thank you both. I would agree with both of those and will not repeat. One of the things that I said to the consultants was I think that we need to be fiscally sustainable in Atascadero. And so that is the vision that I have. I think about the zoo and how our community loves the zoo. When we went out for our D20 sales tax measure and did a survey, I mean, 2/3 of the community are like, yes, we want that zoo. Everybody really, it's something special about us. But our general fund subsidizes that to the tune of about $500,000 a year. So that's $500,000 a year that is going for zoo operations and not for, you know, public safety and roads and those other things. And so I have a vision of that being fiscally sustainable and how can we make that happen? And just Atascadero in general, which it takes some of the things that Councilmember Bourbeau was talking about to make that the case. Then I would say, you know, one of the big ideas, and I don't know how big this is, but I like the idea of, you know, maybe sort of more of a medical, you know, plaza or whatever you want to call it on Morrow Road. I just see that opportunity there. Is there, you know, how can we incentivize maybe some of the medical uses in the downtown or in other areas to congregate on Morrow Road and get some synergy around that. So, you know, you look at something, say like 2 James Way in Pismo Beach, and they have that whole area where it's not just medical doctors, but it might be a naturopath or a chiropractor or a nutritionist, you know, along with a myriad of medical doctors. So I like that concept and love to see what could be done there. And really, I agree with the other things. So thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Newsom.
I have to remember my order again. I think it's reallocated. Reorganized. Yes, we're reorganized and seats. I think our strengths of downtown are also one of the big ideas of having more of that. I think that what we've done with La Plaza and all of the development and outdoors board shop as you go by tonight, all lit up. Just, you know, the excitement and the joy that we're starting to see in the holiday spirit. I'd like to see more of our businesses getting that foot traffic. I'd like to see more of downtown developed. Still want to make sure that we're protecting and maintaining our unique family-friendly community. That's where a lot of us come here, and this is why we enjoy our neighborhoods and what we've developed. Again, more jobs and more outdoor connectivity. Our community is really known for our outdoor parks, our outdoor activities. Like to see us connect a little bit more of that throughout town as we do start developing the commercial properties. And I've already shared all of that with the consultants. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I'm looking at our community, I echo my colleagues' comments about the small town feel of our community being essential to not just our charm, but to our experience. We are a resident-centered community, so which makes us very different from the more tourist-oriented or more vacation home-oriented environments. And our strong civic life, something that Councilmember Bourbeau mentioned, is a real strength here. Partly, we help that happen by having spaces in which people can gather together, and by having all of these events that we do that invite participation from people regardless of their age. They're good multi-generational events. Also in regards to how much money they have. We have a lot of things you can do, whether it's movies or music or dancing horses on a tamale festival that you can see and enjoy, or the snow we just had, with all of your friends, whether they're in big houses or little apartments or all crammed together or on big acreage. And that strengthens our connections, our human connections as a community. In terms of big ideas, I want to see the self-driving electric trolley that goes up and down El Camino Real and connects from Santa Barbara Road to Santa Cruz Road and allows people to from one neighborhood to another, where kids, where seniors can come into downtown. They can go back to their neighborhood. They can gather together and to have some kind of way of that to connect the long stretch of our community along El Camino Real, to have so that you have that experience of a vibrant downtown that is the center core with surrounding neighborhoods, some of them walkable, and people being able to gather together by mode of transportation that is simple, and you can hop on, hop off, and preferably free, or at least nominally expensive. So that, that's, we're talking 2045. So the technology isn't here yet, but by then maybe it will be in that time. And then, as I also want to echo the remarks of the mayor and Councilmember Bourbeau about, in terms of fiscally for our community, we need to move ourselves closer to being where the people that work here can live here, and the people that live here can work here. Because we know from data that every day, not only do a lot of people from our community go to Cal Poly or go down into San Luis Obispo to their work. So we have a lot of people in the professional and managerial class that leave the community for their work, or they go to Diablo Canyon. And then at the same time, we have a lot of our service employees who can't afford to live here. And so they're coming into the community, and then we have this big flow, and we need to try to get both the jobs and the mix of housing opportunities so that we can live here and work here both.
All right, let's move on to our next one. Challenges and opportunities. And so again, from council, just sort of big picture of all of this. We don't need to go through each and every single one of these in detail, but just sort of big picture, the challenges and opportunities related to these items here. So I will start this time on my right with Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Okay, thank you. I think that the challenges that we faced, the fiscal one is significant and ongoing, because we just don't have the tax base we need for our support. We also we lack a mix of housing. The housing costs are really high, and even though we are somewhat more affordable than many other communities in this county, it's still a real challenge for people, and it limits our ability to attract new employers. It limits the ability for the next generation to find opportunities here, because they can't see a way to that. So we need to find a way to house the next generation. And we also need to be realistic in our planning that we are a land limited community. So there aren't big tracts of open land that for either industrial or housing purposes. And we need to be really creative in leveraging the land that we've got.
Councilmember Newsom.
I would say our most critical challenges is going to be incentives and financial constraints, whether it be by those that are looking to relocate their businesses or the residential. I think cost of living is up. I think cost of everything is challenging. And as we're looking at public facilities and services, I think we need to find creative ways to be incentivized.
Comes back to the fiscal sustainability. It really does. Because then we think, public facilities and services, it's being able to, pay our employees a competitive wage, to, keep up on the roads. We have the most, we have more roads than any other incorporated city in the county. And so that's a challenge. And, thankfully the voters passed F-14 back in 2014. And since that time, we've paved, I believe, more than 30 miles of center lane road with those funds specifically. But still, that's 30 over, out of 140. We have a lot of roads to take care of. So that is a challenge, and it really does come down to the fiscal aspect, and certainly echo what my colleagues have said.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate the fiscal thing, but I think you've all addressed it, because it is just so critical to our ability to provide services. And so I think, though, in terms of the challenges and opportunities here, the challenges are for employment development and commercial, because we certainly developers want to build housing here. We do have a somewhat limited supply of land. In that regard, we don't have wide swaths of flat land at El Paso or even some parts of San Luis Obispo where they can suddenly, add a 500 unit subdivision, not suddenly, because it's all a lengthy process, but, we don't have that particular, type of ability to add new residential development, but we can, and we've certainly not had a problem with developers wanting to build houses here. The bigger problem is getting them to build commercial developments, either retail sales tax generating development or just bringing jobs. And sometimes that's a chicken or egg situation where, employers look like, well, we want to see more amenities in town, more places to eat, places to shop before we, set up shop and hire employees here. And so that, limits the employment development. And then conversely, the, retailers want to know there's not just a population here, but a population of employees here, of workers here. So we have a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem there. We've made some considerable strides, particularly in the downtown, but we have a long way to go. And so I see that still as one of our most significant challenges.
Councilmember Daris.
Challenges for Atascadero I see is, well, a lot of what was already said, but I want to hit on a couple of others, like, lack of industry or head of household jobs, of course, is something we're always trying to push. Getting something like that I think would be important, but also the cost, the housing that we have and the cost of housing. How can we make Atascadero, make living in Atascadero affordable for low income wagers, the types of housing that is available. We don't have large tracts like Councilmember Funk mentioned. So these commercial development, I think is important, but we don't have large areas. We have a few that hopefully will start to get going here and will help, but the commercial development, I think, and housing, I think, is probably the two critical ones that we're facing.
I'm going to point out that most of us focused on the challenges.
Well, and I was gonna say
something that I do want to say is, and I did say this during our one-on-one, and I want to reiterate that I think a real opportunity is the potential future spaceport in Paso Robles, and our relationship with Paso Robles, how we work together, not just mayor to mayor, but Lorelei and Lorelei Capel here with economic development, and Paul Sloan and Paso, and a synergistic relationship where we don't look at each other as competitors so much as, hey, what do you offer? What do you bring to the table? How about us? And how could we work together and support one another? And I think that is a real opportunity to continue to strengthen that and to build on that and see how, as that plays out, what is the opportunity for industry here to address the challenges that my colleagues and I have mentioned.
Mayor, thank you for bringing that up, because we all did focus somewhat on the challenges and not the opportunities. And one of the things I think is an opportunity, I mean, it's a bit of a challenge, but I think, while we still have to apply all of, California's very time consuming and onerous rules about building things, we, I think, have been a somewhat easier city to deal with than some of the other cities in our county. And I think that we do have an opportunity to be welcoming to the kinds of commercial retail and job producing development that we want to see, and make ourselves attractive to those kinds of builders by being as streamlined and as open, and flexible as we possibly can be.
Well, remember, you and I were both at the dais when a business owner said, "Oh, it looks like I can get a lollipop at Atascadero and a root canal in another locale." So we took that to mean that he liked our process and saw how we worked, and we're friendly and trying to look for solutions. So, all right, can we go on? Oh, is there? Oh, okay. Again, we don't want to dive too deep into the things, but Councilmember Newsom, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
It's kind of hard. Some of us participated in the group session and had close to 45 minutes one-on-one to share our ideas.
And everybody will, like, we're all going to do that.
I know we're all headed that way. Opportunities is that we do have an amazing staff who works really hard on the grants. We've been really lucky to have all of you put in your time, your energy, to keep us open for business. So thank you.
And I want to mention that opportunities too. One is simply that the weather are lovely Atascadero summer nights that last for months, and it creates the opportunity for more indoor outdoor types of experiences that have become very useful in COVID, but also are a real market for an attraction for folks. And then I also want to mention as an opportunity the Prittery, that the minute we've got 150 people rolling out of the Sunday afternoon matinee looking for where's dinner, then we'll have, dinner will be served. And, those properties and, that we're looking to have those restaurants will have that support. And just another way to really to attract people for experiences that they can't buy on Amazon and can enjoy together in the community.
I do know those hot Atascadero summer nights are one of our city manager's favorite things. All right, let's go on to the next one here.
And again, this is great feedback. I do want to just emphasize again, every challenge can become an opportunity. And that's, as we move through this general plan project and process, that's where alternatives, policy solutions, options, we'll dive in a lot of detail on a lot of these topics, but this is great. So this slide again is kind of similar themes on challenge.
Wonderful. So I'm going to start with Councilmember Borbeau, then go to Councilmember Daras, and we'll swing around.
In terms of this, I think obviously a lot of us would point to La Plaza as being a keystone development for our downtown and our whole community. But also some of the things that have happened. I mean, there was unfortunately a time when you could come down here at 7 o'clock on an evening and you could probably go bowling on Entrada because you wouldn't have to worry about getting hit by a car. And after Street Side Ale opened up, you couldn't do that anymore. And that alone, that one restaurant and those business owners who invested in consolidating two smaller properties into one facility, it was, I think, really a good launching point for a lot of what we've seen happen downtown, to where I don't think there's any particular vacancies in the downtown. And it just shows how one thing can make a difference and begin be a catalyst and begin a process. And then with La Plaza is really keystone, has been a great thing. And one thing I'll just say about mobility and transportation challenges, the mayor had mentioned, we have more roads than any other city in the county, but I just can't say enough about what our staff has done with the F-14 additional half-cent sales tax. That's technically general fund money, but the prior councils, this council has always agreed to focus that on neighborhood roads. And I get more and more comments from people now that it's been in place for numerous years that they're just seeing it. They're seeing more places they go. They're on a nice newly paved, resurfaced or whatever road. And it just shows to me, that's really a big success story.
Of course, La Plaza is the first thing that comes to mind. That project right now is thriving, as we all can see, and I think it's going to continue to invigorate our downtown. On this particular topic or this question subject line that, I was thinking about this afternoon, I have more comments and questions on this one because I was thinking about all the projects that happened over the last 10 years, or maybe even more. I think it's called a Moresco Business Park or whatever it is on 41. Spring Hill Suites. Of course, Home Depot was going to be successful just because of who they are. We have a lot of developments. The Galaxy Theater, that whole area is, for the most part, I believe, is occupied. They came in, they were successful on their own, and we were hoping that they would spark development in the neighboring vacant lots, and that doesn't seem to be happening the way I think we would have planned or would have liked to see. And that strikes me as interesting because they individually are successful where they're at, but you would think that that would bring additional development to the area, and it just hasn't done that. And I'm just curious as to what we can do to change that. I mean, Del Rio, there's a lot planned for that, for all four of those corners. And I think if they happen all at the same time, that's great. And maybe that will really help that whole area to continue to grow, and maybe it will spread out from there. But that was something that really struck me with a lot of the successful projects. And excuse me, I'm sorry. And what didn't happen next to them. On the mobility and transportation, I think because we're in our county, our cities are so spread apart. I think of public transportation when I think of this. Getting to bus stops, we have two main corridors, warehousing, if you don't live close by, and then how many buses do we have actually come through? That's a real challenge with that. As we mentioned earlier, bicycle roads that are safe for bicycles because they're wide enough or have bike lanes and whatnot we don't have a lot of that. But on the other hand, I see in Atascadero more of a leisure biking type thing, and not necessarily biking to work. It'd be nice if we had the jobs here where people can get on their bike and ride to work instead of drive their car. That would be nice too. But I think the mobility, the terrain and just the public transportation limitations that we have is what I'm thinking of on that.
As far as the development projects, I'm with my colleagues on La Plaza being the premier example of what has worked really well, in part because it is, as a mixed use development, it's a really good model for downtown, and we're just beginning to feel the effects of that. But also it's been designed with care to look like it belongs where it is. And so because of its design and visual impact, it will create synergy with the surrounding properties in a way that I think will be really valuable. And then my probably least favorite development project is the long effort that did not end up with any development at all yet at the corner of Del Rio Road and El Camino Real. And with our single largest commercial property having pages and pages of deed restrictions that make it difficult for its new owners to develop that property in a way that is powerful for our community. So whether you wanted a Walmart there or didn't want a Walmart there, the whole process of that ended up with a really difficult position for our community where it is much harder for us to have something valuable. And then in the meantime, some of the surrounding properties have been entitled with very high traffic count uses so that it constrains what can be done on the biggest pieces of commercial property because we have properties that got entitled separately to high traffic counts. So that, just the whole course of that didn't go well in a way that would be ideal for our community. In terms of mobility and transportation challenges, we we got a lot of hills and we have no sidewalks in a lot of our community. We're not going to be able to have a fully walkable community. Not with large lots and all of the things that we have here. It's part of our rural character. But I think we can have a chance to have walkable neighborhoods, thoughtfully designed for multi-generational living, some places where seniors could move to that are more walkable within the immediate zone, and that where they don't have to drive and they can downsize from homes that we have young families eager to buy and occupy. So that you could deal with some transportation and housing things. So strategic, selective walkability will be really valuable for us. And connectability. We also have to be attentive to the fact that we've got 8 freeway overpasses. And each one of them is a binding constraint on the flow of traffic in the neighborhood around it that affects what development can occur in that area and the quality of life as people are managing around the traffic.
My colleagues have all spoken to what developments stand out as successful and least successful. As you drive down both El Camino and Highway 41, you can see our growth, you can see our successes. You can see the properties that are still vacant that are looking for that next step in the next development stage for them. And every day, I think our city is receiving applications for businesses in our community to develop. I think our biggest mobility and transportation challenges are the 8 exits northbound and southbound. Sitting here writing them down, trying to go, okay, each direction. That kind of limits the, it intersects our flow of traffic. I think some of the mobility challenges we are going to have, and I constantly hear our community voicing, is the layout of the bike path on Highway 41. And trying to understand that parking. I think community engagement needs to happen to help our citizens and the community to come forward to, one, discuss the challenges they have with change, as well as getting their intake as to what's really important for their day-to-day lives.
Regarding least successful, you've heard the successes, and I would agree with those. When we look up and down El Camino, there's something when you maybe remember when Derek Kirk came to the chamber and they rebranded and moved downtown and just kind of started visioning more of what the chamber moving forward was going to be. And what the chamber decided was, we're going to embrace the 7-mile stretch. Like, we're not, this is what we have. This is who we are. Let's embrace it, and not just, oh, we've got this 7-mile stretch that we all think is, it's not to say there aren't challenges with it, but there's going to be challenges with anything. So I think what's happened over, due to our incorporation, in 1979 versus say Paso in 1889, and other cities much earlier, you look around and there is a bit of hodgepodge that, stems from that, previous zoning. And you have a lot of that we saw through the corridor study that we did, a lot of underutilized properties. One that really stands out to me is, what we often refer to as the old Spencer Center. You've got the main anchor that's actually not even facing towards the street. And then this big L shape and a couple things up front, and then this wide swath of parking. And all the signage in there is just really sort of almost crafty, homemade looking. It's just, it just looks like a very dated, older center. You have some good businesses in there. It's not the businesses that are the problem. Just the center itself is less than inviting, let's say that. And then I think when you have just these little strips that there's no connectivity in between them, again, I just don't think a lot of forethought. You had, somebody owns this strip and you develop this strip and this little parking space, and then there's one next to it, next to it. And so it had, somehow working, and again, with the corridor study, looking at what are the opportunities to pull more of that together and create, I think Susan was talking about sort of that walkability, that connectivity between how do we create a place rather than people just getting in their cars and going somewhere and then going back home or getting in their car and going somewhere else. Is there a way to create more experiences up and down the corridor, just like we're doing with the experiences downtown? Of course, mobility and transportation is that strip, but we are solving that with our downtown infrastructure enhancement plan. So we're very excited about that. And just sitting on the SLOCOG board as I do, I know our biggest transportation challenge right now is potentially losing urbanized status. And that would lose us about $26 million in the North County of funding over the next 10 years. So money that we get for transit, say for our dial-a-ride, will now have to come from our LTF, which then means money we're not putting into roads. So that is a challenge, and we'll know soon, if that's happened and what maybe some potential fixes are, but that's a concern. Okay, let's go to the very last one. And what I'll ask my council members, I think, in terms of who we should reach out to, we've had those conversations. And so, let them know one-on-one if there's someone else, but we don't need to address that. I would just say, is there a wrap up of something that you haven't mentioned that you want to now? So I'll go ahead and start with Council Member Newsom, and we'll trail around that way.
I always like to plug the younger generation. They're so influential, even at 4 years old. Anyways, just engaging with the younger generation. As we look at this plan is for 2045. What's it going to look like so much further? I watched Back to Future the other day and was kind of blown away how much changes. So thinking outside of the box, I think, is also important. There's just so much that can change in that time frame. So thanks for being forward thinking for us.
Thank you. I likewise would encourage us to reach out to the schools and to young people and to the families that are raising kids here, to really look at that, the future that we are building for our community. Let's see, there was just one other thing I was going to mention. If it comes, it just left my head. So if it comes back to me, I'll bring it up. But to do make sure we engage also in different times of the day. I know I wanted to make sure when we've got this bolus of information about that you're developing about opportunities and constraints and the physical layout and how we think about the community. It's really important to get that known and have people engage with that, because as we're envisioning our community, it really helps us to have a common fact base. All of us up here are really keenly aware of the fact that every piece of housing that we do costs us twice as much in services as it does, as it generates for the city in tax revenue, and that's something we struggle with all the time. But most of our community doesn't know those things, and it will help our community have realistic expectations and develop great ideas if we get that information out better.
Councilmember Darroz, followed by Councilmember Borbo.
Thank you. I think that was a good point on the expenses, or what it takes for the city to run, and how revenue is generated and what projects are going to be helpful. I think that's a really good point. Otherwise, I don't really have a whole lot to add other than to simply agree that I think a lot of the younger folks in our town, I think, should be engaged as much as possible as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and agree with that.
I have nothing else to add.
And I don't either. I think we've done well. So thank you very much, Dan. Is there anything else that you need from us tonight?
I would agree. This has been great. And thanks to Bridget and Noe, and I think Kelly as well, for taking copious notes on the murals. So we're getting a lot of ideas here, and some thoughts for us to be thinking about for the open house timing, other events, how we're engaging. So this has been really helpful. One thing we were thinking about just during this conversation is we should have the open house location date solidified here pretty quick. So we'll be doing email blasts, other notifications around the save the date. But we can turn this into a survey that goes out with the save the date. So again, it's bringing awareness to the project, but also just some brainstorming ahead of the open house. As a
Fantastic.
way to reach more folks. So
Fantastic. We love it. Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Thank you all who were here and participated. We appreciate you. We will now move on to, I'm going to ask, are we good to move on to the next one or do we need a break? We're good. All right, let's move then. We're going to go on to our Restaurant and Development Incentive Loan Program. I'm very excited. We're going to talk about this. There have been a few folks in comments, I think, who didn't understand what this was about. And so this is the opportunity for our community to learn what it is that we're looking at doing, what we're considering here. And this is going to be our Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development, Lorelei Capel.
Thank you and good evening. Go ahead and share my screen. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Item C2, Restaurant Development Incentive Loan Program. So tonight we're here to talk about an exciting opportunity. We last spoke about this in early 2022 in January when we talked about our action plan and how we were doing in our strategic planning. We heard loud and clear as staff that council's priorities are key focus areas downtown, and we'd like us to look at ways to assist with the development of new restaurants, specifically to explore ways to reduce startup costs. And that's exactly what we did. Just backing up a little bit, a lot of community engagement had gone into this action plan, specifically the Measure D20 outreach and engagement. That was really a big canvas of downtown and cast a really broad net, asked the question, what would success look like to you as community members if we spent these funds the best way? And downtown emerged as a very important key theme, as well as police, fire, staffing, and all of these other words you can see in the word cloud that resulted from these engagement efforts. So since then, staff have been talking with community members, talking with other agencies who've done similar programs to the one we'll propose this evening, as well as local businesses to see what matters most and how we could really support bringing new developments, new restaurants, and reducing startup costs to Atascadero. So the goal, kind of a personal goal, but a goal of this program is to install full service kitchens in downtown, kind of expand our eating and drinking establishments to bring more entertainment. I think Councilmember Bourbeau hit the nail on the head when he said we are in a bit of a chicken and egg scenario when he was talking about the general plan, where we would love to attract businesses to Atascadero with high wage jobs. And in order to do that, we need a place for those people to eat at lunch, a place for them to stay afterwards and create that thriving downtown atmosphere. So the concept for this program is to offer loans of up to $125,000 for hard costs, meaning equipment, machinery, fixtures, furniture, for restaurants, new restaurants, or renovations and expansion of restaurants to get them full commercial kitchens. The interest rate would be 4.25%, and it was subject to change based on prime and other factors with market conditions, with a maximum loan term of 84 months. And how we will do that is kind of confine that to the downtown commercial zoning district. And we would contract with a third-party provider, which is the Economic Development Corporation of Ventura County, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. They're also an SBA and SBDC lender, and they have experience helping cities like Camarillo, Oxnard, Simi Valley, Ventura, and many others who I've spoken to, some of them, about their programs. And really, we would be looking for restaurateurs, local restaurants already here that need to expand or renovate to attract eating and drinking establishments in our downtown that will have a full commercial kitchen, or expand the commercial kitchen they do have to allow for more dining opportunities that will have on-site dining. So these are not for takeout restaurants. These are for locals, this is not a large chain that might not need that kind of funding. These are for small businesses. And we're looking for places that would be open more, expanded hours. As you know, Atascadero has, can be a food desert after 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. on some nights of the week. So we're looking for more opportunities for our residents and visitors as well. So that is ultimately the long and short of it. I'd love to go ahead and field any questions if you have any, and kind of talk through this program and see if you have any questions on the staff report and all of the details that were included.
Did you have anything you wanted to continue with? Like, do you want to field questions first and then move forward with the rest?
Yeah, I think the rest
Okay.
was just our recommendation. So
Okay.
we can kind of take a look at that.
Yeah, let's pull that up.
Yeah, let's
Perfect.
pull this up and you can kind of, again, talk through these, ask questions and kind of tell staff what you think and see if we have any ideas to improve this program or if we're ready to take some action.
All right, thank you. So yeah, go ahead and, so thank you for going to the end there. Let's go ahead and go back to the other page that has some more of those details, as I imagine that might be where some of the questions come from. So I will look to council. We'll start with Councilmember Daris.
Thank you. So a question that I have is on, for what reason, why a potential restaurant owner want to do a loan through the city and through this third party, EDC, rather than go to a bank?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have set the loan rate, the interest rate at 4.25%, which we understand is in keeping with Ventura EDC's wage rate that they have determined based off of the prime. And so they are a specific percentage below and they are at 75% of prime. It's kind of where the window where they lend. So this allows for a low interest loan that beats the traditional bank. So if somebody were to walk into a bank, they'd probably be getting 6 to 7%. And that would be a good rate at this point in time, because we know labor costs, interest rates, inflation, a lot of those things have posed really big challenges. The cost of installing a commercial kitchen right now is anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000. Hence the cap of $125,000 specifically just for the hard costs alone. So that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Member Borbo.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To follow on to that question from Councilmember Deriz, though, the rate is still considered a market rate in that it's not subsidized to the extent that it would trigger prevailing wage requirements, which would
That is correct.
negate the entire purpose of.
Yeah, that is correct. I've had to do quite a bit of digging and asking around. No one had very straight answers at first, but we were able to kind of track that down. And also because prevailing wage is triggered by contractors that work on public works projects. Public works projects are defined as any projects that are put out by public monies. So because these are hard cost fixtures, there is an exemption because the rate is in keeping with the 75% that the Ventura EDC, their loan board sets, that is in keeping with the prevailing wage and not a gift of public funds as they've described it.
Thank you. And along those lines, my understanding in discussing this with the city manager is that the California, I think it's the iBank, I forget its precise name, but that they are in effect providing some sort of loan guarantee to the EDC for this, which is another reason, I think, in terms of answering Councilmember Driz's question regarding why would a business want to do this, right? I mean, there's somewhat of a loan guarantee, but that works to our benefit as the city, if I understand it correctly, because that means we, let's say somebody does this, they, borrow $125,000 and then, the business doesn't work out, but they've got this nice equipment sitting in there. We effectively have a lien, if you will, collateral on the nice new kitchen equipment, but also some of what we've given is guaranteed.
That is correct. iBank backs the Ventura EDC from anywhere between 80 and 95%. So on their loans. So if they were not able to collect on the loan and someone were to default, the Ventura EDC And the city of Atascadero would would have the backing of the iBank as well as the collateral of the hard costs fixtures that were purchased under the loan.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Because I think that's very important for, the public to understand that we're just not just handing over money and then, if something goes belly up, we're out. We and the taxpayers are out. So, I mean, that's two very strong protections, if you will.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in the staff report, it indicates these would be general fund dollars that we would be providing as loans, not as gifts or grants, but as loans. When we originally discussed this program, if I recall, we were thinking of COVID related relief money, stimulus money, whatever you call it, since there were multiple iterations of that. But we were able to utilize that money or that funding directly through another process. Or I guess my point is, we had another pot in mind, but there's a reason we're tagging this as general funds, right?
Yes, the ARPA funding that was received from the state has been used up to $10 million. Jurisdictions are allowed to backfill general fund losses through COVID. So it has been allocated or will be over time to our general fund, and we are using general fund pot of money to create a loan fund of up to $1 million for this. And really the goal is, over 2 or 3 years, those a couple of those loans, maybe up to 8 loans could be made to get us up to that $1 million. And that means about 8 restaurants or so could be established with this loan fund over the course of 2 or 3 years, which is a really big change in the behavior in the downtown of Atascadero.
Right. And along those lines, you may not be able to answer this specifically, but do we have a general idea of what a full service restaurant would generate for the city in terms of retail sales taxes?
That's a really good question. No, but I can find that out. I'm sure we have that information. We have lots of people we could call and ask, but that's
right. Without.
Yeah, we could actually calculate the return on investment pretty quickly.
Because I think that's another important thing for people to understand and appreciate why it is we'd be interested in doing.
Yeah, maybe our city
program
manager
like
can.
this. So, I mean, we can't reveal. Staff can't reveal how much a specific restaurant,
Sure,
pays because it would reveal their revenue figures. But
If
just
I
in general.
could, I think the return on investment in terms of sales tax revenue for an independent restaurant is not going to be significant. That's not why we're doing this. We're doing this to create that synergy where more and more businesses come. We have an even more vibrant downtown, which then draws other businesses that want to also locate elsewhere. That is something we know through surveys that have done through, developers, through businesses elsewhere, saying, why would we want to locate in Atascadero? And one of the keys is that we do need places to go, places to eat for their employees. That's hands down it sounds strange, but other than say land use, zoning, buildings, of course, are key. But the next one really is, what are my employees going to be able to do when they're in Atascadero? And so this lends to that and building that synergy. So that's what's really important here.
I think that is a good point. I mean, that is obviously the synergy we're looking at, but it is substantial enough now with us having an effective yield of 2.5%. With the 1% base plus our 2 local sales tax measures.
It's sort of like the cherry on top, if you will. So you're correct to bring it up. Not that it would be the main driver, though.
Right. The synergy is the main driver in the development of the downtown area. That is a catalyst to other things that we want to see happen is the primary driver. But there are other benefits and also the other things I mentioned that minimize the cost or risk, if you will, to us and the taxpayers.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think there's a very similar scenario with our downtown infrastructure enhancement project that we've been talking about. If you'll look at case studies where they've invested $10 million or $11 million in infrastructure in the street, $275 million in indirect, in related economic development has come and followed because new jobs are created, new businesses relocate. So we're thinking that just a restaurant, while food isn't subject to tax, and so sales tax revenue won't be necessarily high, the stores and the shops and the magnet that it will create for downtown Atascadero and the activity that it will bring, and someone choosing Atascadero over Morro Bay for date night. That's the kind of thing that we're really trying to force change and create change by implementing such a program. So
Those warm summer nights where you don't have to wear a sweater and freeze. Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Thank you. A couple of technical questions. As we look at page 43 of the agenda packet, in the middle there's a question of who would not be eligible for the funds. And then one of the items is chain restaurants with more than 4 of the same restaurant locations within the same corporation. Could we clarify that language?
yeah, we're really, the intent here is to make sure that if it is a national chain that
Mhm.
has 4 restaurants of the same name, that might be getting too large for the small businesspreneur, a restaurateur that we're trying to attract here. It's a number that we just had to kind of put a number on so we could be very clear, because we will have the idea is that we will have a loan board of bankers that will be approving these loans. And we want to make sure we're giving them very clear direction when they approve who is eligible and who is our highest, candidate here for these loan dollars. So we're providing direction this and sending a message. This is not for, I'm not going to use a specific chain restaurant, but
Right.
you know all of the national chains. That's not who we're looking for. We're looking for local businesses and local restaurants that have less than 4 businesses of the same name.
Okay, so it's the same name or same branded restaurant in more than 4 locations.
Yes, that's exactly what this. Yes.
Okay, that's
correct.
Maybe we could
Thank
change
you
that
for
language.
clarifying, because
Yeah.
it is odd. The way it's put
odd.
together,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
If there's another better way to describe it, we can absolutely make that change and switch as we move forward. But we've talked through this with our third-party lender and said, what is the best way? And talked internally, and as staff, we're thinking this will, prevent more of, such and such a corporation from that has restaurants from New York through Texas to California from being the recipient of our very thoughtful public money.
To be clear, though, a company that owns multiple restaurants of different names in our community or our larger North County community would be eligible,
That is correct.
because they own multiple restaurants of very different
That is
types,
correct.
names, operations. They would be eligible.
We're looking for variety and small town kind of
Exactly.
customization here. And it's really interesting because there are some great chains that are small. Maybe they have 10. I'll use an example of a great I picked up a flyer from a really great restaurant called Nick the Greek when we were in San Jose recently for a medical appointment. And they have great food. And I thought that would be great. And I keep thinking, would they be the right type of restaurant we'd like here? They just opened in San Luis Obispo. I thought that was great and exciting, but that's probably not the company because for us that we would be looking to target here because they at this point have about 14 or more chains. They are small. They would be great, but they have probably the funding and the backing and the capital to get something done here without our help. So.
I want to follow up on that. So
If we could continue with Mayor Pro Tem
Sorry.
Funk,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
kind of interrupted and then everybody else
Sure.
piled on. So you please continue.
That's okay. Thank you. I do have a little bit more in the way of questions. Another item in that same spot is that eating or drinking establishments would not be eligible if they're not going to install a type 1 or type 2 hood. I'm not real familiar with hoods, but just tell me the implication of that. Does that ensure that bars or tasting rooms that have incidental food or fast food restaurants,
Yeah.
are we excluding those kinds of usage? So we're really focusing on something, an experience where eating is the main thing.
Yes, full service restaurant is what we're looking for. And if you have a hood, you're typically serving, all or most type. It doesn't, this is a specific one of those things where we have to do our best to articulate what we're looking for and what we are not. And we are looking for someone who wants to have a full service restaurant or a bar or eating or primarily was a drinking establishment that would like to now serve food and stay open later and give our residents and visitors those options. So if they can install a type one or two hood, they would be considered a full service restaurant if they have the full inside dining or dining that's not a takeout and all of those other things that come along with it in our criteria here.
Okay. Speaking of the 10 p.m. food desert, let me direct this back to the city manager. I know that one of the constraints that we've been dealing with is the alcohol and beverage control from the state, ABC, limiting people's liquor licenses. So they have to shut down. Have we gotten some leverage on that?
We absolutely have. We were able to meet with alcohol and beverage control, and they've revamped over the last few years. As you know, this is a battle that we have been working on for some time. And they did admit that they were just putting a blanket permit criteria on all of their licenses here in Atascadero. They did say that they would be open to more individual determinations and individual types of licenses, allowing people to serve later and stuff in specific areas, especially with all of the blessing and the probably some extra action from the city council, just making that very clear that our downtown is an area that we do want to be open past 8 p.m. And we do want to, a lot of times those restaurants need to serve alcohol in order to serve food that late and be successful. And so trying to do that. So anyway, we will be bringing something to you probably in February, kind of declaring and making it clear that our downtown, we want vibrancy, we want a little bit later. That'll make it very clear for ABC that in that area, that is the focus.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And then last, is it possible in this program to have a higher loan limit for certain situations? In particular, I'm looking for, can we do a limit of say 200,000 for a situation where the full service kitchen would go in and result in converting a non-conforming use around the sunken gardens?
We did put a stipulation in there that on a case by case basis, we could look at a request that exceeds the amount. But we thought that was a fair limit. The 125 would get most buildings a kitchen specifically for the hard costs, which are fixtures and furnishings and appliances that are needed to get that going. But yes, that's actually a really good point. And maybe we could do something separate for the non-conforming piece of it and keep to our loan amount of 125 for specifically for this project. But we would encourage people to ask, to just when they are looking to apply, to call us and tell us their situation and see what we can do within this. Because
Yeah.
I do think that most people might not need nearly the 125,000. We might get a lot of people. I've spoken to one restaurateur who just needs a new walk-in fridge ASAP to expand their operation, and they're growing and their demand is raising. So that's a great thing for us, and we want to support that. But our goal is new restaurants in downtown, open longer, more meals, more days of the week. So
Right. And part of what we've also been trying as a council to do is to liven the environment around the sunken gardens. That was a key piece of what we envisioned for the property that is adjacent to the Centennial Plaza. And creating that. And if there were a way to structure this so that some of the additional costs that occur when you're trying to move out a non-conforming use, particularly with dental practices, for instance, they get a lot of hard costs for equipment and fixtures and things in that practice that would have to be replicated elsewhere for that, if the whole thing were going to move, or there might be additional costs if you're going to build above it.
yes,
That would involve other equipment.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And anything we can do to incentivize someone to put money into converting those spaces that currently have maybe like a dental chairs in every room versus, something that's open and more of an open floor plan. Those renovations are expensive. They would have to incur the costs of, under this program, specifically because of the prevailing wage, we have decided to do this only for fixtures. So maybe there's another way we can work with people to say, if it's a non-conforming use, let's have that conversation separate from this loan program. So,
Okay, that would,
yeah, we
I
want
think
to
it would be
encourage
helpful.
that.
Okay, I think it would be very helpful for us to
Yeah.
make that as overt as possible
I agree.
and dedicated specific to that area.
Yeah.
To again, achieve the synergy that we're looking to do.
Maybe there's
Just to-
targeted outreach we can be doing beyond this program to start talking with people who might want to change that, but didn't see a path forward because of the cost. But let's get that conversation going and maybe the word out.
Thank you.
Councilmember Newsom.
Typically, how many restaurants are we seeing filling out applications every year?
Oh, we have actually had an influx this year. I would say off the top of my head, I've approved business licenses for about 8 or 9 restaurants, some of them just changing names. So it's not the installation of a new restaurant per se, but several of them are new, including CLO and Born Barley, which is coming soon, and a couple others to the downtown. But the rest of them are more, I'm taking over someone else's who wants to pass the torch. So 9 new restaurants at least in Atascadero in 2020, they're citywide in 2023 or 2022.
So we could potentially timeframe be shortened from 2 to 3 years to a year if everybody's very
Yes.
excited about downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole idea and goal and premise behind this program is to change the behavior of people who might be somewhere in our county thinking, I'm going to open up a restaurant in, such and such a beachfront community. And they see that this is an opportunity and it gives them a path forward that they didn't see. And they choose Atascadero and bring a diversity of restaurants to us. So we're ready for that. And we want to get the word out if this goes through.
Okay, thank you.
Lorelai, one of the comments we had from a member of the public at a recent meeting was that, if the city's going to lend money, we're picking winners and losers. And so could you speak to, who's making these decisions and how this is just briefly kind of an overview of how this process works?
Sure. We spoke at length with the Economic Development Corporation, Aventura ADC, about how they have run things similar to this program in the past. And they recommend that we work with a board of bankers who approve loans and understand this space, restaurants specifically. The application is a pretty involved application that asks for collateral and tax returns and all of those things. So when people are applying, they're going in understanding that, they are going to have their finances reviewed. They're going to be the most competitive. We do want to make sure that this money is spent on people who know how to, have the means to pay back these loans, and that it's fair and balanced. And that's very important. So this is not anyone picking winners or losers. These are people who we are giving them clear criteria of what we're trying to achieve and the objective. And a third party and their board of lenders would circle around and say, based on our findings, these people are the most qualified, most likely to be successful in paying us back, do need the help the most, and are probably going to help move Atascadero forward in the right direction. So.
Great. And I'm assuming with all the work you're doing, this word is already getting out, but how do we plan to get the word out so we get those folks who are most in need and most interested and willing to move forward with that, the financial wherewithal and the business plan? How are we finding these folks?
I just had a great conversation with Butte County EDC today, just asking them about how they manage these similar programs. And they suggested that we do some sort of training if we're successful in moving forward after tonight, just a training to let people know what this program is about, advertise it, get the word out with a press release, let people know that we're open for business and this is how open for business we are and how much we mean it. So it'll just be great. And I think good news spreads like wildfire. People are always, really excited to spread that kind of language, especially after the last couple of years, and restaurants, maybe above all, industries have been hit so hard with the very small margins of profit that they have. I've talked to local restaurateurs, and after 3 or 4 years, some of them are just now breaking even. So in paying their staff of 10 and keeping things up and running. So this is coming at a really great time to help people who might have that new walk-in fridge that they need, or they want to expand their dining to bring in more customers and seat more customers. So this is something that we can do to help them.
Thank you. And I believe Councilmember Darius, you had another question?
I did. I just want to follow up on the chain restaurant, who's not eligible. And, I understand not bringing in, the chain fast food joints and stuff like that. But I want to understand the distinction between, say, a restaurateur that's local that may own a restaurant in 3 or 4 or 5 different cities around where we're at, Bob's Steakhouse, and they got one in Paso, Morro Bay, blah, 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 4 or 5. That's not, I don't believe that that's a chain. I don't, and I want to make sure that that's not going to be limited, because I think that that would still be beneficial to us. And there might be 5 restaurants with that name owned by one person or
Yeah.
whatever, but it's not a chain. Is that going to limit them from possibly opening?
We
up?
don't want to. We don't want to limit those people. We do want to figure that out. So if we need to, this was our staff making our best recommendation on what would that threshold be if we were giving this package to some people who are going to go into a room and make a really tough decision about, who is the best candidate. So, we can absolutely modify that word to say 5 or 6.
Well,
We
again, I
could
don't know if
say local.
Yeah, I don't know if the owner, if a single owner, sole proprietor of the restaurant name that has 5 locations, I don't think that's the same thing as a chain, because you're going to a corporation. So as long as there's that distinction
Okay.
and it doesn't limit, then I'm okay. But I just want to make sure that that's not going to affect, our local restaurateurs from
Sure.
opening up something here just
So-
because they have multiple locations.
I want to make sure, I don't know that there is a definition of a chain.
Okay.
So you can't say that. If you have a desire to change it from more, right now, Bob's Steakhouse, if they have 4 or more already in here, would not be eligible for this. As Lorelei said, when we were looking at this, typically if you have 4 or 5, you're better capitalized and can probably do that in the downtown. This is not eliminating people from putting in restaurants in the downtown. What it is trying to incentivize those that may need a little bit more help, maybe don't have that history, that collateral, that capital of the others. But certainly this is your program on what you guys want. So if you do want to, raise the cap for places around the Sunken Gardens, or you want to change it to 5 or 6, but we do need to make sure that we have very clear definitions of what those are, so we don't get in trouble of picking and choosing, hey, we like this guy better than we do that guy.
No,
If
and
I-
actually,
oh.
I'm sorry, no, that makes sense. On the, like you're saying, if somebody has 4 or 5 restaurants, they're going to be more successful, so they don't need the program, but we're still not saying that they can't be in town. So that
Absolutely.
clarifies, that makes, so I don't think we need to change the number based on that. That makes perfect sense, at least as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Did you
I'm
like your point?
wondering if let's say that we move forward, if we move forward with it as is, and then after, so many months, we're hearing that, gosh, we've got, 5 who came forward, but, they've got, they each have 4 restaurants, something like that. But they could possibly be a fit, and we don't have others who are coming forward that meet the qualifications. How do you see us being able to change this down the line if it's not producing the result that our community has said they want, which is more restaurants downtown?
Yeah, we've thought about that. So what happens in year 3 when we're wildly successful and we have our loan fund completely replenished, and here we are, maybe it's halfway replenished? What do we do with those funds? Maybe we want to turn them and modify the program, that everything from this point forward, year 3 forward, we can do for those other types of business. But I like your point, because the goal is to change the behavior of people who wouldn't otherwise locate here. But we want I hear steakhouse all the time from our residents. We'd love to have a steakhouse. We'd love to have it. So how do we bring that here? So maybe that is something we can do to modify, and we'll have the application and information from the people that have applied in the past. So hopefully if we can maintain contact and say, is there something else we can be doing? I would never let a warm contact go once we said this isn't the right business.
We know that about you.
I would follow them and hunt them down and and find another way to work with them.
Sweetly hunt them
Yes,
down.
I would absolutely gently hunt them down.
Councilmember Forbes.
Follow-on question for that. The city manager, when she was speaking, mentioned about the need for clear language. And I think, this language actually is clear enough. And if experience shows it needs to be changed, you'd bring it back to us for change. But I am curious in terms of clarity, the part, it's in the staff report and you answered Mayor Pro Tem Funk's question regarding I think it says this, the city could do more than 125 or just could do more, but it doesn't talk about the ifs, the whens. But my question would be, is that something city staff would do? Is that something we'd authorize EDC to do? Or is that something you'd have to come back to council to do? I just think that needs to be clear, for everybody involved or do you need council to clarify a higher authority in terms of exceptions or something?
Yeah,
Can
let's
I
see.
Jump in really
Yeah.
quick,
It's
Lorelai.
at the bottom,
'Cause
43.
Lorelai and I talked about it. We do envision staff approving that in conjunction with the EDC. We would want the EDC to be saying, hey, this person really needs 127,000 and this is why. We did not want to, the idea was that staff would have some leeway, maybe in the 10 to 20% range of the 125,000, but we didn't want to put, and staff can approve up to this, because then what that means to a lot of people is, hey, they're going to loan at whatever that top amount is. So we were trying to think of it as kind of, as long as it's within, similar to the change orders and the purchasing policy, and EDC had recommended it, and there was a good reason that staff would have that authority. Again, this is a program that we are developing from scratch. So if you have a different preference, we can absolutely do something differently there.
Not a preference, just a concern that normally, your staff's authority is, from the council is usually limited to some amount or some criteria or something, but maybe if you follow the purchasing, something along those lines, it just seems that it should be at least clear enough what your authority from council is.
And we can absolutely do that. You guys can clarify that tonight, and then maybe we just don't put it in a lot of the literature.
Exactly.
On page 48 of the staff report on the loan program overview, kind of the summary, we have in the loan terms, we state the loan maximum is 125,000. Overages may be considered with city approval. We could say overages up to 200,000. We could say city council approval, however we want to do that. So if you have modifications.
Let's come back to, we're kind of starting to get into deliberation
Right.
here, and we
Sure.
still need to go out to the public. So let's
Okay.
just finish with questions, and then I'd like to go to public comment. Are everybody complete right now with questions? Okay. Wonderful. So thank you. This is very exciting. You're on fire with this. This is exciting. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open this up to public comment, and any member of the public wishing to speak on this. I see some folks in the webinar. If you would raise your hand if you've got any comments. We've had people saying things publicly, so I would hope that they would be here tonight, but I don't know that I'm actually seeing that. All right, if no one's going to raise their hand, I am going to close public comment. So let me give that another 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to us for deliberation. So what I'm hearing from my colleagues is that overall, when it comes to the loan terms, the eligible expenses, ineligible, additional criteria, all those things, we're all feeling in agreement that yes, this is a good program to move forward with. The one thing that maybe we want to look at is saying, okay, we would we would give staff the ability to approve an overage up to, possibly a certain percent, but that again, isn't out there in the brochures or something like that. Because certainly we trust staff, especially with the input of EDC, to make those kind of decisions. And we at the council level don't want to be making a $3,000 overage decision. That's not needed. So how might we, I'll go to Councilmember Borbo, since you were thinking of this. I know you said similar to the purchasing policy. Are you thinking a percentage?
The city manager mentioned that. I mean, I certainly don't want staff to have to come back to council for additional approval, and that's why I brought it up. It seems to me that the approval level, I would just kind of leave it staff to suggest something, whether it's a certain percentage or just make it the same as if there's a comparable thing within our purchasing policies that, the city manager could authorize up to whatever a certain percentage overage or something like that, just so you don't have to come back to us. And yet nobody's going to say, well, who the hell said you could offer $128,000 because the council said 125. So, I want to, just kind of see if you have a suggestion for the wording that might be included. And as mentioned, it wouldn't be proffered up to the applicants. It would be there in the background for you to utilize.
The purchasing policy apparently has up to 25% for change orders, which I did not know. That would be in the $31,000 range. So it'd be 125 plus 31,000. If you want to leave it at 20%, that would allow me to approve loans between 125 and 150. If you did have the desire to go up to 200, we could certainly do that. I'd probably like a little bit more direction on what types of situations, if we're going to have that big of a gap, 75,000, additional 75,000, what situations you feel might trigger that?
Well, I am not an expert in restaurants and kitchens and equipment. So I would need to know and I don't know that any of us here are, I'm married to one, but we haven't had this conversation. So what would the scenarios be, Lorelei, where someone would say, hey, I need, an extra Sub-Zero, or I need an extra this or that then adds 30,000 to it, where we would want to consider that?
Yeah, a lot of that, it really was buried in construction. So that is an area we had hoped to not get into.
Yeah.
So for example, one of the restaurants in our downtown that did a significant renovation was up to 210,000. And I asked them why and how, because that was it seemed really high. But when they got in and were underground, they realized plumbing needed to be replaced. So it was more of what it cost to get the commercial kitchen built, but it was the fact that we have aging infrastructure. Many of our buildings in downtown, building stock is, can be a challenge.
And we need to avoid that, particularly because of the prevailing wage.
That's
So if we're
exactly it.
sticking with simply the equipment, machinery, fixtures and furniture, potentially if you have a larger space, you might have more furniture or something like that.
Yes.
So in your professional judgment in what we're looking at, could we say, okay, that 20% leeway, if you through EDC are looking, if EDC comes and says, hey, this could be really valuable. Here's why we think so based on what you've given us. And then you as city staff look at that and say, we agree. And that 20%, would that be a good limit?
I agree. Yeah. And I think we'd like to just, if we were going to look at up the threshold, we'd like our legal team to look over it and make sure everybody's comfortable and just give us the opportunity to do that. But
Okay.
Yeah, we're comfortable sticking to hard physical costs and
Great.
fixtures.
Does that specific language with ordinances and all of that have to be figured out tonight? Or can we say, this is what we'd like to do? We can pass this and you'll go take care of it.
We will take care of that. We
Love
don't have
that.
to, we'll also clarify some of the chain stuff. So
Yeah.
we can take care of that. We don't have to wordsmith tonight for sure.
Fabulous. I love that. Councilmember Daris.
I mean, is there any particular reason why we can't just put a hard number on it and say, this is the maximum we're gonna have on the
I
loan?
think she's come up with the 125 and that feels good. There may be cases where there's a little bit
Well,
more. We're going to say an up to 20% overage. I think that
Well, I
just
know, and I
keeps
think
it
when you
simple.
give that cushion that can go up, then is there a possibility that most people that are gonna want to take out this loan, take advantage of this program, go, well, then I'm just gonna go ahead and get the maximum amount?
No, because
they
we're not
can't?
going to be offering that to them. That's kind of
Right.
what we've been talking about.
Right.
That's not going to be published. We're not going to be out there saying, hey, get up to 150. But if someone's coming forward and it ends up being a few thousand more, we don't want to cut it off. So we're trying to give a little bit of leeway without continuing to push the threshold. Because then at 150, you say, well, someone's here at 153.
Right.
So
I-
we've got to cut it somewhere. But I think like we do with the purchasing policy to say, hey, staff has this discretion with, talking with EDC. I would be comfortable with that.
And would this discretion of, an additional up to 20%, would that be in collaborate, the decision be in collaboration with EDC's board?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we could phrase it as, if recommended by the EDC in a, under extenuating circumstances, in furtherance of the goals of the program, if recommended by EDC and approved by the city manager, you have the latitude to go 25% over the max.
20%.
20%.
20%. Okay, and we're not wordsmithing
Yeah.
tonight. I think we just want to get the gist.
But I
of
mean, that's the
this.
gist. I think.
Yes, Council, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
I would support the language that, and intent that Councilmember Bourbeau just put out there. I think it's wise for us to have a cap because, while we have staff with good intent and lots of transparency, and we're really setting this program up here carefully, this is the sort of thing that could become, could be at risk of creating favoritism and problems if there weren't that kind of clarity. So I think we're better off that way.
All right, it looks like we have some consensus here. This is one of those things that we talked about one January, January 22 or February 22. And to see it come to fruition is really exciting. And as Lorelei said, the reason this is coming forward is because all of you have said, and we agree with you, we want a more vibrant downtown. And certainly we have seen so much of that in increasing that, like this robust activity and the energy that's downtown. We've seen that happening over the last several years, and it paused with COVID, but it has just continued. And to help facilitate more of that, because that's what we're hearing from you. That's why we're bringing this program forward. And so thank you for your creativity and pulling this together. And excited to see where this goes. And I think our entire community will be. So this is one of those things that you don't know you can actually do this, and you get someone in and says, yeah, look at this opportunity. So I will look for a motion.
I will move approval of staff's recommendations 1, 2, and 3. You add some additional language along the lines of what we discussed.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Council Member Bourbeau, a second by Council Member Newsom. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bourbeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Funk,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we are on to council announcements and committee reports, I believe. I can't turn the page here. Yes, council announcements and committee reports. So I will go from my right to my left, Councilmember Funk. Mayor Pro Tem Funk.
Okay. Let's see, we have a design review committee meeting this Thursday that Councilmember Newsom and I will be attending. That is looking at a project on Highway 41 at approximately Kerberville, as I recall. Did I get that right? Okay. Good. And then it is a mixed use project. And then Homeless Services Oversight Council, the executive committee will be meeting this week. And we will begin a conversation that includes warming centers, as was brought to this, mentioned to this council before that we don't have one here in Atascadero right now. And we are looking at that on a strategic level, countywide.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Funk. I almost called Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. All righty. Our city schools committee meeting has been postponed until after the first of the year. They're swearing in their new trustees this evening and trying to establish who's going to serve on that committee. And nothing else to report.
just think it tomorrow, the Integrated Waste Management Authority meets. We are down 2 members because Arroyo Grande and Morro Bay, their reps didn't run for reelection. And so we're waiting for those 2 cities to appoint new members. So it's fairly low key meeting tomorrow. On November 30th, I attended a League of Cities, League Leaders meeting in Monterey. And the outcome of that was the league's decided that for 2023, its advocacy priorities are: 1, to protect and expand investments to prevent and reduce homelessness; 2, to increase the supply and affordability of housing while retaining local decision-making; 3, to improve public safety in California communities; and 4, to safeguard essential local revenues and support fiscal sustainability. And I was going to tag on, Councilmember Newsom beat me to it to mention that schools committee, city schools committee meeting has been canceled because they need some time to appoint members to that committee, because I would comment that they at their meeting tonight sworn 4 new board members, and they said goodbye to 4 board members. Tammy Gunther, a good personal friend of mine after 16 years. Don Clicker, to think a friend of everybody's. And a friend of the whole community after 16, 17 years of board service. Probably our #1 Greyhound fan, Ray Bubin, and George Shoemaker. So I wanted to say thank you to all of them for the service they provided. Welcome aboard to the new school board trustees as elected officials. And we will meet with them when they can reorganize, as we say. So,
On Thursday, Capslow will be meeting. I think the hottest item on that one is going to be the Oklahoma Avenue safe parking. There's a lot of issues going on with that, and what Capslow's involvement will be with that, and how to keep it going or not, and what the county is going to do to how we're going to work with them on that as well. That's all I got.
Thank you. I had a SLOCOG meeting last week. We're moving forward with a North County multimodal corridor plan, and this is necessary to be qualified for state funding. And so expected to be completed in January of 24. We'll be looking at things like current conditions, key transportation deficiencies, potential improvements, that type of thing. The Atascadero Templeton connector, basically right now, in order for somebody not in a vehicle to get from Atascadero to Templeton is a pretty long way around. And so for many years, we at SLOCOG, that's actually the county, working on the connecting piece. And the problem with it really has been Union Pacific Railroad, and building a shoe fly to kind of bypass and get the work done was going to be too expensive. It looks like in the end that may be the route that they end up needing to take. But for now, we've lost the ATP funds for that. So they'll have to go back out for another cycle. So the project's not dead. It's just, they still have some work that they're doing on it, but we've lost a good chunk of funding, and we'll have to look to get that back in the future. Gus Corey, who's our legislative person, he said the fare box recovery reprieve is going to continue through the 24-25 fiscal year. And so I made sure I asked, I said, is that really true? Like, I don't see it in writing. He said it was. So that was good news for us. And lastly, SLOCOG is kind of wading into the broadband piece of things. And we're really wanting to make sure that, if anything, they're potentially a clearinghouse, sort of, they could be the lead agency on a programmatic EIR, something like that. But we're wanting to make sure we're not doubling up. And so I know Lorelai's heavily involved in that. I'm always talking with our executive director, like, okay, what are we doing? What's the county doing? Making sure that we're not overlapping. We want to make sure that any efforts we're putting out there, monetary, staff time, all of that is all moving everything forward and having the most impact that it can. So let's see. And then I mentioned the U.S. Census issue with the funding during the general plan update. We should know any day. I haven't had an email yet, but we should know any day, but it's not looking good. But there are some potential fixes. Just don't know what that could possibly be. So With that, we'll move to individual determinations or actions. I know we have one from the city clerk. Are there any from council?
Congratulations to our high schoolers for their CIF championship. That's pretty awesome.
You
I-
beat
I-
me
I
to
couldn't-
it.
I couldn't make it to the game. I wish I could, even if it was pouring down rain. I wish I could have been there, but it was quite a blowout, 41-0.
Yeah.
But congratulations, and it's really awesome to have that locally here.
As I said on the city schools committee, and I'm sure everyone has already reached out, I would ask that we help celebrate this community with a parade, which is always a given, because we do support our Greyhounds. So thank you.
All right. All right. Everybody's very happy about the Greyhounds. I have to admit, I felt slightly bad for San Gabriel. I mean, that kind of that sucks, like getting on. Sorry, it really stinks. Like come all the way up here, like 41-0 and you're in the mud and the rain and you're going home. Like I felt a little bad I mean, not that bad, but felt a little bad. All right. Individual determination with our city clerk.
Yes, thank you. Just a reminder that our commissions and committee terms are expiring. And so we will be flying, excuse me, the at-large positions for Planning Commission and for C-Stock. There are also C-Stock positions that are opening as well, terms that are expiring. So we'll be reaching out to our nonprofits to hopefully get some interest and get some new appointments there as well. And we will schedule in January. I'll be reaching out to all of you to schedule in January to have those to have that special meeting to look over the applications and do some appointments for the at-large positions. And then hopefully come January. And once we do that, we'll have your appointments to the Planning Commission as well. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. And to all of you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and thank you for making life in Atascadero amazing here in 2022. And we'll see you next year.
I assume there are no changes to committee assignments since you didn't mention.
I am going to do that next time.
You can wait till next time. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.
Good night.